Plato's critique of sophistry, insofar as it illuminates the meaning of techne, which lies at the heart of work, may thus be taken as a critique of the modern concept of work, or that's what I want to propose. So the modern concept of work is sophistical work. 3 basic points in Plato's conception of techne. First, Plato explains in the Republic that a techne, any techne, is by its inner logic ordered to the good of that upon which it is set, or to which it is directed, rather than the good of the practitioner, the good of the art itself, or any other external purposes. None of these purposes is excluded in principle, but understood correctly, they prove to be secondary fruits resulting from the pursuit of the proper good. So, for example, the art of medicine is directed not to itself, but to the body, or in other words, it does not heal medicine, but through the use of medicine heals human beings. It seems like a very simple point, but with Plato always, it's actually quite an extraordinary one. The techne here can be said to have an essentially self-transcending or other referential character. The achievement of its proper good, human health, may entail a host of further goods in a natural and spontaneous way. For example, the doctor may become rich, he may learn the true meaning of service, or come to understand better the deep mystery of human suffering. He may make discoveries that improve the practice, he may make a contribution to the well-being of his community, and so forth. But none of these is the proper purpose of the techne of medicine, and that techne becomes distorted when we forget this. It is a very simple point, but in fact the world would be a profoundly different place if this simple point were understood and acknowledged. Second, a techne is a kind of knowledge, Plato says, and so is rooted in the truth of its object. As Plato shows in the Gorgias, one cannot speak well about something unless one understands it. He makes this point in response to the sophists who think of language in a purely instrumentalist sense. For them, as we mentioned above, one can learn techniques of effective writing and speaking that can be applied subsequently to anything. If this is true, however, it means that language is not of its very essence a matter of truth. For Plato, by contrast, what a word is, by definition, is a medium through which the truth makes itself manifest. Analogous to this, he observes that every techne, by its very essence, is a matter of truth. Medicine is not ordered to merely feeling good, to the merely subjective conviction that one is healthy, to the effecting of an outward appearance of well-being. Instead, it is ordered to being healthy, to health in its truth. One cannot practice medicine unless one knows what health really is. Thus, for Plato, every techne is rooted in the truth of reality and ordered to its good. Or in other words, techne concerns the goodness of the truth of its particular matter and the truth of its goodness. At the outset, I referred to the need to recover a contemplative dimension of work. That dimension, it seems to me, arises precisely when we recognize techne's connection to the truth of things. Now, truth and goodness converge particularly in beauty. The third point I wish to indicate in Plato's conception of techne comes from the Phaedrus, a dialogue essentially about beauty, the love it engenders, and proper use of language in its regard. The Phaedrus at one point picks up the thread from the discussion in the Gorgias we just discussed and carries it a step further, a step into the very theme we began with here. To paraphrase the discussion, Socrates affirms the claim we just made, namely that techne presupposes knowledge of the truth of its object, but then he asks further, what in fact do we need to know in order to know the truth of a thing? To specify the question, he takes, once again, the medical art as an example. What do we need to know, in fact, to know the truth of human health? Though he does not explain his answer to this question, in fact, rather than offer an argument, he appeals to the authority of Hippocrates, the father of medicine. It's not too difficult, I think, to adduce reasons. In order to know the truth of health, he says, we need to know the nature of the cosmos as a whole. Drawing on Plato's discussions elsewhere, we might add, to know this, we have to know the nature of the first cause of the cosmos, the nature of God himself. Now, it seems to me that what Plato says here perhaps stands out in an especially vivid way in the example of medicine, and that comes to light especially when we consider the state of things today. But I want to suggest that something analogous might be said about every techne, every kind of work, insofar as it's genuine. Every techne that's a real techne, which means ordered to the goodness of the truth of the goodness, or in a word, the genuine beauty of its particular reality. So let us consider, for example, the techne of house building, another classic one. And imagine someone who comes to this work out of a genuine love of houses. So what does he have to know to build a proper house? What sort of questions would naturally enter into his field of interest? For one, they're the questions of materials. What's quality in this case? Why is plaster and brick better than wallboard? What's the best wood? Where does it come from? What is the source of this wood? How did the trees grow? What's the climate, the history of the region? What's the history of the company that harvested and cut the timber? On another level, he would have to know what a house is for. What constitutes human flourishing, and how does the layout, the design, and shape of the rooms and their relation to each other and to the whole contribute to this flourishing? The prominence of hospitality, for example, would yield a very different design compared to the privileging of storage. And then there is the great question of style. What is the relation between usefulness and beauty? What is beauty? What is the evolution of styles throughout history? And how do different styles reflect different worldviews, different convictions about the meaning of life, different understandings of the nature of God? What I want to point out in this example is that the particular reality of that on which one works, a house in this case, opens up beyond itself, ultimately to the whole world and to God, if it is affirmed through a genuine love. And this is because love is connected to beauty, the goodness of the truth, and the truth of the goodness of a thing. It seems to me we have a rather obvious analogy here with a good love relationship. Rather than read this, just the particularity of the relationship, if it's healthy, spontaneously opens you up to other people. It's got an inner openness to make room for others, and it also, the more deeply you're involved, if it's a good relationship, you become more interested in other aspects of your life and closer with your family and so forth. A bad relationship, the exact opposite happens, right? You become distracted from things in the world. But I want to say good work opens, if it's healthy, it opens the whole world up to you.